Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Del Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm so thrilled to have as my guest Lori Carpenos. Lori is a psychotherapist, LMFT, executive coach, and Three Principles trainer, author, and speaker. Lori first met Sydney Banks in 1985 and, in her own words, tried to attend every talk of his from that time forward. Looking back, she says that during that time her life went through a metamorphosis that she previously thought would take lifetimes. For the last 33 years, Lori has worked mainly with couples, but also with families and individuals who want to learn more about innate health and the principles. Lori is also the co-author of The Secret of Love, an incredible book that has helped hundreds of couples heal their relationships and find the true nature of love. Welcome, Lori. Lovely to have you here today.
Hi, Del. It's so great to be here with you. I love this show. I love what you're doing. And I have to tell you, so many of the speakers who have been on were great mentors for me. They're
Really?
wonderful teachers, have a wonderful depth of understanding. So I feel really honored to be on this show with you.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. And you too. I mean, you are one of Sydney's original students too. So you're right there with them. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So let's talk about that. How did you first come across the principles?
Quite by accident. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I had moved there in my 20s, mid-20s, I think, with the intention of being there for a year. I was, footloose and fancy-free at that point in my life, and I thought, I just want to experience it. Haight-Ashbury and, all the things that I heard as a youth. And that turned into a much longer chunk of time, like more than 5 years. Mm-hmm. During that time, I had a boyfriend who was planning to go to study at the Advanced Human Studies Institute. It was the only place that was teaching what Sydney Banks wanted to share with the world. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Florida thinking, well, great, this will get me back to the right coast. I want to get back to where my family is. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what I was walking into.
Wow.
No idea. Yeah. And, it took a while for me to realize that there is really something to explore here. There's really something to see if I can understand the way, I was watching other people just go through enormous change in their life and hearing their stories, some of which is in The Secret of Love. That was just miraculous how that all came to be.
It is a fabulous book, as I said. I mean, I recognize a lot of the Three Principles teachers in there and their spouses. And I mean, there's everyone from Dick and Bettinger and Coisy to Chipman and Jan. And I mean, so many that share, Elsie and Ken, that share their stories. And I was saying to you earlier that it's so beautiful because these are not stories of like, well, everything's just perfect. It's the real life stories about the challenges that come up in every relationship, but just how best to navigate them or in the healthiest, most loving way. And it's a fabulous book. And I mentioned to you before too that it really it covers the principles too. Even if you're just reading it to understand what the principles points to, it's a very simple and well laid out book. So it's not complicated. So a lot of people go, well, what are they? And I go, you know what, read this book because you can't fail because it's about love. It's about love for yourself. It's about love for your fellow man and the love for your intimate partner and your children. So it's a beautiful book.
And Del, I mean, the length of time that I was a student and a teacher of the principles, writing this book, I realized so much more. It's such an incremental change. Yeah. That just in hearing all of these stories, it started out with my client stories because I would be pretty shocked that they would come in after just a few sessions and they had their own insights. They saw something inside of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes the difference for people.
Yeah.
So I'm writing down their stories. And at some point I realized these are enough stories for a book.
Yeah.
But I'm not about to take that on. So I contacted Christine Heath, and Chris had a beautiful tape that Sid Banks had put out called Thought in Marriage. And we used that in for the chapter heading, so each chapter begins with one of his quotes that we then match a story to.
Yeah.
And the stories, like we got, so many wonderful stories. We had to cut it down. And we wanted to make sure that it was the full array of people from all walks of life, with all sorts of what they would call problems and difficulties. And then our colleagues got wind of the fact that we're doing this book, and they volunteered. We have a great story for you. And what an honor to hear their stories that, they were just so humble by what they had seen for themselves, by looking inside themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the game changer. And, people can say those words, just look within, look inside yourself. And for the longest time, I said, well, I have no idea what that means. No idea. But as I heard other people's stories, it started to become more and more clear to me. And, that's the value of having stories. And
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
really grateful to Chris for seeing how to put that together.
Yeah. Tell us the story about, I know that you, George Pransky wrote the foreword for the book, but he said there was one stipulation that you had to adhere to before he'd do that. So tell us that story.
Oh, yeah. Well, George and the Pranskys have been such wonderful teachers for me. And George wrote the first, the relationship handbook. It was the first relationship book after we were learning about the three principles. So to have him say yes, he would give the foreword, that meant a lot to us. But he said on one condition, if you write your story about being single. And I said, well, George, it's a book all about couple stories and four couples. And he looked at me and he said, I don't care, Lori, it'll help a lot of single people.
Yeah.
And, it was like ding, ding, ding. And from that, because there is no difference, because the love is coming through us. It's not the love that we get from other people. That's the biggest misnomer. And the very thing that leads to upset in relationships. Because people think that they've got to have certain conditions, have their partner treat them a certain way, they have all these expectations. And I've heard things from clients like, why doesn't he know what my needs are? Well, you have everything. Every individual person has everything inside of themselves that they already need. There's no, and when people stop looking for it from their partner, they're so much easier to live with.
Yeah.
Where you're going to be happier. You're going to be more available to hear your partner's stories. You're not going to hold on to things or dwell on something that you thought was maybe some bad behavior. A story in the book, which is also an interview that I did of Tom Kelly. Tom's a research psychologist in the Midwest. And at one of our annual conferences, Tom was telling me this dating story before he met his wife. And there we were in the, during the break, and I'm like crying because people are all around. It was just such a touching story. Aww. And so from that, I created an online program called Relating, Dating, and Partnering. And so that was really for single people to be able to get wind of this understanding we're all talking about that's changing lives and had changed all of us so dramatically. It's really something. I know I would not be living in this a
Mm-hmm.
state of peace of mind. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that I'm not getting things done. I'm getting more done than I ever did when I was in my head,
Yeah,
worried about getting
absolutely.
things done.
Exactly.
It's like a little miracle, isn't it? I
Yeah.
know that you've seen the same thing.
I have, and I've experienced it for myself too. But I want to get back to talking about the couples because I know you mentioned earlier. Sometimes when people first get into the principles, this can be the sticky point. I think, like when we talk about, you know. Not having the expectation that our partner make us happy or that's where our love comes from is from an external source. It's the love that comes up within us that feels so good. Certainly does for me. But I know that there are some people that start having questions about, well, how much do I accept? I mean, there's sort of not having every need met, but there's also maybe a relationship where there's some I'm not talking about extreme abuse when, physical abuse. I don't think there's any question that that is not a relationship maybe you should stay in or want to stay in rather. But let's talk about when people are feeling like there may be some neglect or emotional abuse or just that some of their needs just aren't getting met. So can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. It's amazing the conversations that couples will have in front of me, and
Mm-hmm.
when they first come in and they're blaming each other for their bad
Sure.
feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they begin to see something within themselves, because I may not even talk about the principles unless somebody asks me, or the important thing is whatever we talk about wisdom in a quiet mind. We have the common sense, we have the wisdom of how to point clients back within themselves or point, mentees or students back inside themselves to see how life really does unfold from within. And we can't we can, but it doesn't make sense to blame ourselves either for a
Mm-hmm.
bad feeling. We just got in a funk. We got in a lot of thinking about it. And um, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing earth shattering. There's nothing, like you said, it's not at all complicated. And sometimes people say, well, this is a little too simple. Come
Mm-hmm.
on. But then when they go out and they live their life and they begin to see how life unfolds for them day to day, that when they're not all caught up in their
Mm-hmm.
negative, judgmental thinking, that they're in a better state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if their partner gets caught up in a lot of negative, judgmental, critical thinking, it doesn't seem like it's such a big deal to the other person because now we know where it's coming from. It's coming from their state of mind in the moment.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that even if they say, you're a terrible person, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that they really believe that.
Mm.
If you ask them the next day or even in an hour when they're calmer, do
Mm-hmm.
you really mean that?
Yeah.
And it's like, no. No.
Yeah, it's there is I think there is a sliding scale. I think there's those, those parts where you don't take things so seriously. But I've also heard when in couples where there's been this sort of dismissiveness of like, hey, it's just your thinking, deal with it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I'm
So
glad you brought that up. Yeah,
yeah,
that's not good.
exactly.
You're
I'm
right.
glad we're on the same
That's like
page with that.
saying that's like saying, well, you're wrong,
Exactly.
even if you're telling the absolute truth. Yeah, I'm
Mm.
glad you brought that up. Because that's why it's an inside out job. It's
Mm-hmm.
the it has to do with insights, people having their own insights.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
I'm doctoring an eye infection. So I was closing my eyes, listening to some of Sid's tapes. And I also just got the tape from the conference. And I
Mm-hmm.
was listening to Judy and Mark. And one of them, I can't remember which one of them, I had to write it down because
Mm.
I can't remember what other people say, but I just love this. one of them said what they see in front of them, because the conversation was about seeing the health in everybody. When you speak to the health in people, you're coming from your health and you're speaking to their health, magic happens.
Yeah.
Magic happens, really, and you know this. So I just wrote this down. I just love it. They see, or whoever said it, sees a pure soul with a head full of thoughts. Right? I mean,
that's simply put.
A pure soul, pure consciousness.
Yeah.
It's all of our thinking that gets in the way. And, it's not overnight. Some people had overnight changes, but that's not typical.
Yeah.
And now it's been thousands of people around the world who, just by pointing the telescope backwards, instead of looking out at the world, blaming our circumstances and situations on events and other people, turn it around and see how you're seeing things. How are you looking at things? How does that impact the relationship?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the way you put that, because what's coming up for me is sometimes people, they might be experiencing disconnect or a bad feeling in their relationship, and they go to their head to try and figure it out. Should I be here? Are they the right one? Are our problems insurmountable? Are we compatible? And thinking. And then I'm thinking, but when you settle down and your mind quiets and you come from that place of love, you can still get the message, this is not the right relationship for me. But when you're coming from that place of love, that's a feeling I would trust, not when you're in that sort of caught up, frenzied, analytical, sped up thinking. I don't think you're going to get any clarity from that place. So I love that.
Isn't it beautiful that we have that inner compass? It's really a directional signal that will let you know if we tune in to where are we? Are we in a feeling of love and compassion and understanding? Or are we in insecurity and fear, and somehow we're not getting enough for what we need? Insecurity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've learned over time, thank goodness, to not trust anything that comes from that place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to wait till things get calm and I'm in that loving place, and then it's clear. It's very, very clear to me. So name some of I know you have this retreat coming up. You have an amazing retreat coming up with Jack Pransky and Nicole Beasley, and they are a wonderful couple. We met them in Peru, and great co-teachers. And I know that you're joining them, and you are going to be doing this retreat. So tell us a little bit about this and what people can expect.
It's going to be absolutely wonderful. It's for, first of all, it's in paradise. It's in this beautiful, all-inclusive retreat, 2 villas, where we have 2 villas. Each one holds 7 couples. So a maximum of 14 couples. And it's just going to be wonderful because, well, how it was in Peru.
I know.
We would sit in a circle and we would, I would love to begin. We haven't worked it all out exactly. We have to see who the people are so that we can gear it towards the group. But I loved when we began with a tape of Sid speaking. And it gets people into such a quiet, restful vacation state of mind rapidly. And then we talk about what we heard. Yeah. And we learn in the circle. People learn from each other's insights.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's going to be that in the morning and at night, and there's going to be a lot of free time in between. There's 6 different beaches to explore. And to have, to me, it's a dream come true. And it's really, it's magical how it came, because somebody read The Secret of Love. They got their relationship back together, and they knew this person who actually lives in Connecticut, where I live, who brings work groups out to this resort. I mean, how perfect is that?
Absolutely.
And so that couple put him in touch with me. Maybe she'd like to put on some couple retreats in this magnificent place.
Exactly.
Well,
So
yeah.
tell me, so people that we're going to direct people to your website and they can look up the retreat and everything. So just to talk about it again, so this is not necessarily for couples that are in crisis. You can be in crisis and you can be giving this wonderful gift to yourself and your partner. But also for couples that just want to deepen their understanding and their love for each other and the understanding of the principles. So tell us a little bit how because I know that you have a pre-call to have that conversation with couples. So tell me a bit more about how that takes place.
Sure. We're going to have conversations to make sure that we have the right mix and match. And it's wonderful to have people who are just, they might have just gotten engaged and they want to ensure that they're going to have a really good, really high level marriage. Mm-hmm. And it could be for people who are, facing divorce even. I mean, look at the people in The Secret of Love that there were people who were on the verge of divorce and turned things around, and then they're celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. Mm-hmm. So, it's great to have a wide variety of people at different phases of difficulty.
Yeah. And you know what I love too is I think when you take people out of their environment, like we do, I do intensives with people where they come and stay in Malibu, and we work together for a couple of days, and there's something about when somebody is out of their environment, and even if it's a single person or a couple, in your case, there's something so beautiful about that, because they don't have the stresses of seeing what needs to be done at home. They can actually just relax and take that time to be with each other, and to I don't think love ever dies personally, but sometimes it can get a little fogged over. So it's a beautiful place to just rekindle that love, or as you say, if it's a couple that are just newly engaged or embarking on a marriage or new in their marriage, to really enjoy each other, enjoy that beautiful healing environment, and to deepen their understanding. So it sounds like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. I love, love never dies. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. How can it die? It's like you've got your own pilot light that's always on, always. So it can't die. Like you said, people just get a lot of negative thinking. And it's not to say that some couples do part and they still love each other. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it was appropriate for them to go separate ways for a variety of reasons, and both agreed to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
So that's possible too. Yeah. The most important thing is the love part of it.
Yeah, especially when you have children. I mean,
absolutely.
even if you
even without children, it's not going to be romantic love if people part ways, but there's certainly just because we love the power that the in Hawaii they call it the aloha, the mana, whatever it is that is coming through us, bringing a formless spiritual energy into the world of form. And relationships are form, where we're two bodies and we're interacting, and but to have that understanding that love can still and does still come through us when we get out of the way.
No, exactly. If people want to bring their children to the retreat, they can. So that's not an excuse not to come, because you don't have childcare at home. So there's room for that too, you mentioned.
There's a camp on the premises, a day camp for the children to attend. Yeah. Nicole's children will be there, so we had
beautiful.
That's going to
happen.
Great.
Now, what about closer to home? Do you hold retreats?
I do. Yes.
Talk about those.
That, like you said, that is absolutely the best way to really get grounded in an understanding and really see what love really is. It's a whole different ball game when people are out of their. It's at a whole different level, really. When people are out of their typical element, they're free from devices and calls, and no, this is a retreat. And I have recommended to my clients that they do this for themselves. Take a weekend, just listen to all the resources. Your program is one program I point people to. There's the resource library with so much on it. And of course, Sid Banks' books and audio tapes.
Yeah.
They're wonderful.
Well, I love that you share this with everybody, and I'm so excited for the couples retreat that you've got coming up. Love is what is underneath all of it. Doesn't matter if you're single or in a relationship. So anyway, Laurie, it's at the end of our time together. So thank you so much for being on the show, and can't thank you enough. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, in person.
Thanks, Del. It was great seeing you here.